Hello and good morning. I'm not watching any more of that Europa League effing shit, was the expression Owen Sheahan has just used here. Owen, sorry for outing you, but that was essentially what's happened.
I'm frustrated, I'm angry.
You're not happy?
With the Europa League in general.
Nothing worse than watching a second-rate tournament with your second-rate team being a second-rate team.
Well, it's true, isn't it? Everything about it was fairly second-rate, so I'm kind of a dishevelled human being this morning after watching Arsenal kind of fall to Bate Borisov, who even when they kind of have any sort of glimmer of talent in their team, Bate Borisov, it is an aged Alexander Kleb. And
he's still going.
Still going, surprise.
Jesus, and one of your former players as well coming back to rub your noses in it.
Like, you know the way when something's so boring you just go into a daze and you're not concentrating? I was kind of like staring at the television and Kleb had popped up for about 10 times at this point. And about the 10th time I was like, holy shit, that's Alexander Kleb. So it took me at that point, that's how kind of bored out of my mind I was by that yesterday. But yeah, so not exactly in great spirits this morning. I am surprised that you're in great spirits this morning and that you're looking so fresh. Because as everybody will have seen this week, you're a huge Post Malone fan.
Yeah, absolutely.
He was playing at the 3 Arena last night.
I went to see them last night. They were great.
See them.
Yeah.
How was he?
They were great now, yeah. There's sort of like it's four-piece instrumental, and there was a lot of people there that were of similar mind to myself, just, you know, really keen to see Post Malone play the back catalogue. And
shut up and play the hits, Post.
That was pretty much it, yeah. I think he's only really got the hits, so it's he's nothing else that he can dip into. No, I didn't go and see Post Malone. No, I didn't.
You've become a fan. His tickets are on sale this morning for a summer gig.
Yeah, I mean, what day did I post that tweet? It was probably
Monday, I think. Monday or Tuesday.
No, maybe not long after that. The 12th, so yeah, whatever day that was, Tuesday maybe. I sort of, he's no Larry Cunningham, says Jimmy Helen, which is a fair point. I started to check out of it a small bit after that. I won't lie to you. I find it quite samey, actually. I find the music quite samey.
Yeah.
Like, you've heard one, you've heard three, you've heard them all.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that you can't just be kind of dragged into what is banger after banger after banger, really. I think I keep myself a safe distance from Post Malone, that I got to a point where I didn't like the fact that I was liking him, but I was, and then I stopped.
Yeah.
So that's how I dealt with my Post Malone addiction.
So you're just not into Post Malone anymore? It's not a...
No, not really. I think I liked him on an ironic level, and then it suddenly became real when it was kind of like, oh, he's actually playing Dublin again. Could I actually put my money where my mouth is? And the answer was no.
Speaking of all of those things, and no, I appreciate that, by the way, thanks for that. Sort of getting into hipster style things that nobody else is into, like me and Post Malone. You're considering going to the League of Ireland game tonight?
Well, yeah, definitely. I like equating League of Ireland to Post Malone is definitely a nice little segue there, and one that should be encouraged. For sure, like, first of all, it's a strange weekend. There's not much.
You've been so disillusioned by watching the Europa League last night that you're turning to the League of Ireland.
Well, like, it's no exaggeration to say I would 100% rather be at a League of Ireland game than watch that Arsenal team play against Bate Borisov in the second leg, to be quite honest with you. And that's not kind of saying that it's a bad product or anything like that. It's just that there's
Which, the Europa League or the League of Ireland?
Well, the Europa League is a terrible product, I think.
All right, okay. Yeah.
Just first of all, like, it's kind of a strange weekend, isn't it? That, like, usually I'd be at a GAA game, or you kind of like work your weekend around Six Nations this time of year and stuff like that. So if you're never going to go to a League of Ireland game,
but you would never been to a Six Nations game either.
I've never been to Six Nations game either. So I'm going to go to a League of Ireland game before Six Nations game, which means I'm more genuine than you.
Well, no, that's definitely more genuine and more sort of hipsterish, I would say. Like, there's, you know,
I don't get the hipster nature of it. Because
what's your local club?
Like, I'm going to try and sample a few. That I think Bowes is my closest club.
Right.
To where I'm living at the moment. I'm living out in the north side of Dublin. Adrian. I'm not going to give out my address. But
so you probably have a pick of Bowes, Shelburne.
Yes.
That's probably about it, really, is it?
Pats isn't too far away either. Just like on the point that it's like hipster or whatever, I think it's actually a very mainstream idea that everybody in this country wants to see football do well. And I think there's a hypocrisy there to say, oh, we need to be producing more young talents, and then you don't actually go and watch the League of Ireland. Or we need to be producing more homegrown talent. And I think we all say the league needs to be better, and then we actually don't go and support the league. And I'm one of those people. I'm one of those hypocrites. It's like those people who say, oh, the meat industry is killing the planet. We need to stop eating meat. And then they go and have 5 pork sandwiches a week. That's the climate change equivalent of people who complain about the League of Ireland. So I'm putting my money where my mouth is.
I don't agree that you can't grumble about the fact that we're not producing talent or the international team isn't better than it is, and then not go to League of Ireland games. I don't agree that there's some sort of link between those two things. Like, you can give out about the quality of the football in the League of Ireland, or you can give out about the quality of the facilities. But there may be many facets of reasons why you may not want to go to the League of Ireland. Obviously, a lot of people do, and they really enjoy it, and that's fantastic, and they should continue to do that. And ideally, like you say, in an ideal world, more people are going to it, and it's a league that flourishes and all that sort of stuff. But I don't think the responsibility is really... I think the responsibility is on Irish football to produce a product that is entertaining and good enough and has all the other attributes that modern sport have in terms of good facilities and family atmospheres and all that sort of stuff, that people want to go to it. I would sort of reverse it the other way. Really? Yeah. Because
I've been pretty comfortable in the knowledge that I've been a hypocrite for the last few years. That, like, I would be the first person to say, League of Ireland, I don't enjoy the League of Ireland. I wouldn't necessarily turn on the TV if there's something else on to watch the League of Ireland game. And I realise that's a hypocrisy, because if Irish football was succeeding, I would be saying, well, we've got a fantastic product here and all that sort of thing. So I think
there's nothing... I can't see the hypocrisy if what you're saying is you haven't watched the product in any great detail over the last number of years because you didn't feel the product was a high enough quality. So there's no hypocrisy there. You shouldn't feel bad about it.
I actually haven't been to see it close up, if you know what I mean. I'm prejudging it, really.
Having watched some games on the TV.
Exactly, and I think watching something on television is a vastly different experience to being there, particularly when it comes to football, right? Like, I think when it comes to football and when it comes to Gaelic football and to a certain extent hurling, I think go to a game before you actually make a judgment on it. I think when it comes to something like rugby, I think fair enough, there are certain technical elements that you need a commentator to help you out with. But I think there's no question that being at the stadium is a far better experience. And, like, especially when it comes to the League of Ireland, people who go to games all the time say, come and sample the atmosphere. And actually just make your decision on it after you've actually been. So that's my new season resolution, I guess you could say. And, like, you know what on Vogue things are, like you and Post Malone and all that sort of thing. Like, you never know what you're going to see at a League of Ireland game. Like, you don't know who the next Matt Doherty is going to be, for example. You don't know who the next Seamus Coleman's going to be. You don't know when he stumbled upon thing. And to be honest with you, if you're going to call me a hipster, well, I'm going to be pretty happy with myself in a few years if I end up spotting the next Matt Doherty at one of these games.
You and a few thousand other people.
But exactly, the less the better.
I spotted that guy. I mean, I would consider myself to be a loosely lapsed League of Ireland fan.
What happened that you're lapsed?
That I'm in. Well, I grew up in a town that was very much a football town that had a tremendously successful football team. When I was a kid in the 80s, were winning leagues, and it was a really attractive from a football and atmosphere. The facilities were awful, like some of the worst that I've ever been at. And they've since, Athlone Town, closed that ground and moved to another ground, which is a far cleaner thing and all that sort of stuff. But unfortunately, the football is going in the opposite direction. And, like, it was a thing to be at, and all my mates were going to it, and the quality of the football was really good. And you know, you could smell the dressing room. Like, there was a lot of reasons to go to this thing beyond... I as a kid was never going to go, and my dad was never going to go bring me to watch the football on the basis of us helping to improve Irish football.
Yeah.
We were going because it was a great atmosphere and the football was good.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way, and that obviously has kind of lapsed over the years from your perspective. Like, the other thing that I was just saying, it's a very basic thing, it's been spoken about all the time, is just Friday nights are such a big plus. The fact that it doesn't really clash with many things, usually, on a Friday night, and it's just a perfect day for any sort of sport. I always say that, like, I know kind of people's jobs and all that get in the way of the GAA ever doing anything like that, but it's a fantastic evening for a game. Like, I mean, Bows against Finn Harps tonight in Delymount. I mean, you could do a lot worse with your weekend than pay 15 quid to go and watch that.
Are you at the point where, like, you need to pick a club now? Is that sort of you?
I'm open for the taking by a club. If Bows play total football tonight, I'm a Bows fan. Simple as that.
Right.
Yeah,
Bows till I die.
I'm easily Bows till I die. Right now it's Bows till tomorrow. But it will be Bows till I die if they win and win in an attractive manner tonight.
Your point about the viewing of sports in the venue versus on TV is an interesting one, and like having been, and I know you discussed this earlier in the week at Anfield last weekend, it's just weird. You would need to watch the game back to actually have a proper sense of the game, really, was my main thing. I don't know if they have TV screens at Anfield. Certainly where we were sitting, we couldn't see any. No, so it meant that if you missed something, you just weren't seeing it back. So, like, there could have been the most incredible piece of skill, which we were fairly far removed from the action. You could sort of have some sort of appreciation for it, but generally you're going to miss it. Whereas on the TV, you've seen it for the 5th time in a replay and you're like rolling around your floor about what an amazing piece of skill that was. And when you're at the ground, it's a moment that is just gone and the crowd goes, whoo, and it's done.
There's a beauty to that as well sometimes.
There is, yeah, there definitely is. There definitely is, but like even great goals, like the Wijnaldum goal was a really brilliant goal that the crowd went mad for. And it was gone. Like literally 30 seconds later, once the game got underway, crowd died down, end of.
What I love about those things, and you get it at quite a lot of GAA games, is afterwards people are like, and this person did that, and you're like, I actually forgot about that.
Yeah.
Because it hasn't been ingrained into your head because you've only seen it once and once only.
And also you're half lathered.
Yeah,
so
well, there is that. And like there are other elements where it kind of leads to the intrigue where it's like, was that really a penalty? Like you were standing in a terrace 100 yards away and you can't really see it properly. So I think it kind of adds to the mystique in some scenarios. But I do agree, like if you're watching a rugby game without big screens, I think you're screwed. Simple as that. I think even if you're at a rugby game, it's very hard to actually get a full picture of what's going on. Like Quinn Rue's performance last weekend, for example, would have been impossible for me to appreciate unless I was watching it on television.
Depending where you were, probably as well. Like I've definitely been at games at times where you're quite close to the pitch. Your different experience actually at the ground, as it just strikes me as we're chatting about it, is probably dictated to by where you are in the ground. Like I've often been at games. I remember one of the first times I went to Croke Park and sat in what was the Canal End upper, looking down at the pitch and getting a sense of the tactics from that sort of
is that for football
view. Yeah, for football. Yeah.
Behind the goals for hurling is a disaster.
Right, because
you may as well forget about what's going on at the other side. You need to get somewhere in between the 245s. I think that goes for football as well, but at least you can appreciate behind the goal.
I actually sat in the lower canal for I think maybe the last 2 hurling finals, or maybe there was a semi-final thrown in there. And look, you're right. Once actually the ball goes maybe even your side of the halfway line or certainly beyond that, there's literally nothing you can see, and even where I was sort of tucked into a corner, even over the other side of the pitch, it's gone. But by the same token, there was loads of stuff that was absolutely brilliant about it, like the angle of, I remember one of the goals that went in sort of across the pitch and across the goal and up into the stanchion, like there was no better view in the ground for it. It just depends where you are, right? Like you could be low down, halfway on the sideline, you're getting the manager's view, that's one experience. You're high up in the ground, you're seeing the tactics, side on, that's another experience. I mean, I don't know if it's where I'm at in life, but it's very hard to beat watching it on the TV. If there's a game that if I'm watching sort of Leinster or Ireland, which would probably be 2 of the teams that I would, in rugby, have most support of, be a supporter of, I want to watch them. Really, if I'm really interested in them and want to get to the nuts and bolts of it, I want to watch it at home on my own on the TV.
Well, the ideal situation is actually getting it in the stadium and then having it ready to watch back when you get home, if you have that time.
Yeah.
If time is no object, but unfortunately you've got things to do and stuff like that. I think it's hard to being there. Like, and also the trade-off is the atmosphere worth it for sometimes an inaccurate viewing experience. I think there's only one sport that you can name in the world that kind of has that imbalance between the atmosphere and actually what you see. And it's darts. Like I've never been to the darts.
As in you see F all?
Well, yeah, you're watching it on a big screen.
Yeah, I've been to the darts, and it was shite. It was an excellent experience. It was brilliant. It was fantastic. I've been to the cricket. Unbelievable day out. Like fantastic. One of the best sporting events I've ever been at was a one-day cricket match. It was a test cricket match. It was one day of a test cricket match. Brilliant stuff. Didn't see a scratch of action.
Really? Well, you would have thought that it would be fairly straight. I suppose if it's when they're reviewing potential wickets.
There was like anything that was going on in the pitch, quite apart from my understanding or lack of it, had nothing to do with the enjoyment of the day. It was like some of the fielders going over and signing a few autographs, bit of sort of banter between the crowd and the players over and back. The darts was like this tiny little dot that you could barely see up on the stage, and you just really had no interest in it anyway.
It probably got smaller and smaller and smaller with each pint you had as well, to be fair.
Well, look, enjoy the night. We'll hear about it next week. I presume there's going to be a full section.
Oh yeah, big time, without question.
Is there a chance you're just going to ditch out in this?
Let's hope it's 3 points for the Bob Marley boys tonight.
Right, if you've got any thoughts on any of that, do get in contact with us. We want to hear from you. What's the best sporting occasion you think that you've been to, or the best sport to go and see versus on TV? So we want to hear all your thoughts on that. We'll bring them to you between now and after 9 o'clock as well. And a bloody packed show we have for you as well. This morning we're going to get stuck into the sports pages very shortly, give you a flavour of what's going on there. We're going to be going live to Connecticut in about 5 or 6 minutes time, where Gareth A Davies, the combat sports journalist, is standing by, who's going to talk to us about the news that Anthony Joshua is going to fight a big baby. So that's coming your way in about 5 or 6 minutes time. We're going to preview the weekend of hurling with Jamie Wall. That's just before 8:30. He, of course, guided Mary I as well into the Fitzgibbon Cup final last night, so we'll get his thoughts on that too. Ronan O'Gara is going to join us live on the line from New Zealand. Just where in New Zealand, we're not sure, but he does have a big game as the Super Rugby season kicks off tomorrow. He's been busy prepping and will be busy tomorrow coaching in that. So going to get Ron's thoughts for you at about 8:15. Alan Quinlan in the studio as well. And Joanne O'Riordan, the activist and journalist, is going to join us just after 9 o'clock on the back of a piece, an opinion piece that she had written in the papers yesterday in relation to her thoughts about the award scheme that we spoke about on the show last week. So just interested to flesh that out with Joanne a little bit more. That's coming your way after 9 o'clock. So it's a pretty packed show, as you can tell. And we're going to chat to you about all of that stuff over the course of the day. So get in contact with us. Don't be shy with your comments. We want to hear from you between now and 9:15, 9:15, 9:45, or 10 o'clock, or whatever time it is that we eventually decide that we're going to leave you. But it is coming up on 8:05 on this Friday morning. We're delighted to have you with us. And we're going to kick things off, I think, with the newspapers and let you know exactly what's going on that front. And we're going to start, indeed, with the Irish Independent today. Kerry Dublin Stars facing bans after Tralee Malee. I mean, it's got to be up there straight off the bat for a tab of the morning to you. Obiuglake and Small hit with proposed suspensions following ugly post-match row, writes Colin Keys here. It's a story that's covered in a lot of the papers this morning, and I've watched back a lot of this footage of the Malee at the end of the Shemazel skirmish at the end of the game to try and establish exactly what blame John Small or Brino Obiuglake had in this entire thing. And it's very difficult to tell. I know that the CCC would have been operating with different angles and wider angles and more footage. It's very difficult to tell who's actually at blame for this thing.
Well, it's very hard to pick somebody to blame from what we actually saw on RTE/Air last weekend. So the director clearly had a shot of what was going on and then cut to it after a moment or two. So you actually miss the vital moment of what started. So we can't see it, but there was a camera on that, you'd assume, or even just the overhanging camera that kind of goes behind the goals would have some view of what actually sparked this whole thing. So you have to trust that they've got the two correct parties there. I can't really say. I haven't even watched the game back yet, and I kind of missed the start of it as well, being there live. But certainly just watching that incident back this morning, you can't tell from your armchair what happened there. But you'd like to think that the CCCC have actually got the original raw camera footage from that particular camera or cameras and have come up with the correct decision. So John Small's obviously got a 2-game ban because it's the second infraction in the space of 48 weeks. Brino Obiuglake, it's his first infraction, so he's going to miss 1 game, which is the Galway game.
It was some sort of an attempted kick. It seems like one of the papers has this morning that was his infraction. Like, as I said, it was just it was impossible to tell. There was one interesting little sort of wrinkle to it just after the Malee kind of had broadly broken up and Niall Scully's walking across the pitch, and one of the it seems like he's one of the Kerry backroom staff. Can't absolutely say that for certain, but looked like it was one of the Kerry backroom staff. Was kind of walking through a bunch of people and sort of had walked around the corner and sort of brushed shoulders with Scully, who took exception to this and pushes the guy back, and there's a little bit of over and back about it. I don't know. It all seemed to me to be, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, relatively harmless, actually.
I completely agree. Completely agree that it was just an enhanced schmozzle. There was, like, kicking is a fairly serious charge, actually. I'd like to actually...
It was, and I haven't got the right expression, actually, because it was in the, I think it was in the Examiner this morning, and we will dig it out and we will bring clarity to that. But it was on the mild end of it. It certainly wasn't suggesting a full-on swinging kick. It was, I'm going to kick you, and then at the last minute I've sort of withdrawn the effort.
It seemed that would kind of sum up the schmozzle perfectly, that a headlock was perhaps the worst thing that anybody endured throughout the course of this.
A bit of a hard nuggie or whatever.
Exactly, a nuggie. Like that's about
the
it.
Official terminology for it.
Kicking the shin or something like that is probably as bad as it got. It was just the amount of people that made it look bad, and it was a bit different to sort of some of the violence we've seen on GAA pitches over the past couple of months, which, to be fair, if it was, we would be saying that it was a terrible sight to see, but I don't think it marred the game. I don't think it had any effect on the spectacle or what people were left with. As I was saying earlier in the week, it's like Dublin are so unused to actually having a good old game that their adrenaline had to be channeled somewhere.
Yeah.
And Kerry are, like, I think everybody was just so unused to good Gaelic football.
Do you know what? Actually, looking at it at the end, the cameras at the end were on Michael Darren-McCauley and whoever was beside him as the game wrapped up, and it was 5 minutes of added time. Fenton had just missed a long-range point effort. It's just slipped a little bit wide. And it struck me that, so you're at that heightened point of tension as a player where every sinew of your being is trying to win the ball back and trying to get it over the bar, and then suddenly in a split second it's over. So the bubble is burst, it's all done, there's nothing I can do now, and it must be very difficult to get from that high to back to a level of normality where you're in a position to say to your opponent, listen, well done, thanks very much, great game. Like, there is a heightened, like, it's the thing that we see in post-match interviews all the time where players come up and they're like emotional or more giving than they would normally be, and I'm not surprised what I'm saying, that it's a fraught situation because of the heightened sense of emotions of players.
And heightened further by the fact, as I say, that they haven't actually been in that situation too much over the last year or so. Dublin haven't been in that situation once in the last 12 months. Once, but like once or twice maybe when they got beaten in the league last year.
Yeah.
But really, over the course of an entire championship,
it's Dublin's fault then, is what you're saying.
Not at all.
It's all Dublin are to blame here.
They basically had 10 minutes to cool down at the end of each championship game they played last year. And I know they'll say that they kept the foot to the pedal for all of those games.
Yeah, but you just don't.
But really, that Galway
it's not the same. Look, no matter what you say, it isn't the same dynamic as trying to get a point in the last play of the game.
For sure. And also in kind of a cauldron where their fans are at best finding parity, let alone overpowering the opposition fans, and the noise is kind of against you. Like, everything we're talking about here, by the way, is just such a great moment for Dublin. As in, this is the thing that's going to kick them on further. That the beast is not being created, the beast is already there, but the beast is being poked a small bit.
Well, I mean, I think you're also poking the beast.
Like, well, I'm not really. I'm just kind of giving facts here, to be honest. I think, as I say, the beast is there already.
For kicking with minimal force, John Fogarty and Michael Moynihan reporting.
I've never actually heard that charge handed out before, kicking with minimal force. So was it like a little toe poke?
I kind of think it was like, oh, I'm going to kick you right in the thigh, and then at the last second, no, it's not better that because I'm going to get banned for it.
Maybe a Dublin man was holding onto his foot and he just shook him off. Is that kicking with minimal force?
That is the Irish Independent this morning. Also, a shot there of Aaron Galan, who shot the lights out by all accounts on Ennis last night in the Fitzgibbon Cup for Mary Eyes. They went through to the final at NUIG's expense, 1-12. Aaron Galan scored, and he's there with his manager Jamie Wall after the game last night. Cost of United sackings since Fergie exit reaches €38 million. Writes Chris Bascom here as well. I mean, the vast majority of that money has gone to Jose Mourinho. He, of that, in the euro sense, has picked up 22 million of that 38. Like, other than that, that's the kind of figure that really jumps out. Mourinho gets 22 million of 38. Actually, the other payoffs post-Fergie, kind of reasonable enough. Like, it's 16 million over actually what turns out to be, I mean, it must be at least 4 managers.
Yeah.
On top, maybe 5 including Mourinho. It's not actually, what I'm saying is 16 million over that number of managers is not a huge amount of money.
Sorry, this is everyone post. So you're including Giggs, you're including Moyes, you're including Van Gaal.
I don't know, would Giggs have been paid off? Probably
Well,
not.
it's only 2 really then in Moyes and
that's
Van
fair
Gaal.
actually, yeah.
Prior to Jose. It's a massive amount of money.
8 million. So they get 8 million each, and I mean, broadly, and Mourinho gets 22 million quid.
It's remarkable. Like, George Mendes has clearly brokered an incredible deal for him there when he put pen to paper for Manchester United. I guess from a United perspective, they may never have thought that they would have been in that situation of sacking him at that point. But then again, he did put down 2 seasons. I don't know. It's
well, yeah. Do you know what?
Is it rewarding? Is this like the biggest rewarding of failure that we've seen?
He's what was the expression about Wenger?
An expert in failure.
I mean, you could class him as an expert in failure given the amount of money he's made out of it. But like, some of the pieces that I've listened to of Mourinho in his final days as United manager that I've happened to hear over the last few days, you almost start to think that he was trying to actually get them to sack him.
To get 22 million euros, you're saying that Jose Mourinho would actually want that money? We surely can't be saying that Jose Mourinho was trying to get himself sacked for that sort of money.
The Irish Examiner this morning, seasoned campaigner. Because I'm nearing the end, everything is more intense, says the Cork player Bennett here. This is Liam Mackey who's writing. There's a pretty extensive League of Ireland preview in the Irish Examiner this morning, and a very long piece here with Alan Bennett, 37-year-old. That's the Irish Examiner this morning. And also Ronan O'Gara's thoughts ahead of his return to Super Rugby this weekend. We'll be picking those up with him in a little bit. Alan Quinlan will be joining us in studio as well for all of that. That's the Irish Examiner this morning. The Times Ireland edition, Mourinho gets 15 million payoff, as the headline there. Chelsea back on track as Arsenal stuttered, as the photograph from last night's Europa League action. Warnock's son under scrutiny is another story here. Cardiff City accused of breaching FA rules regarding intermediaries because of their extensive use of an agency who employed James Warnock, who's son of the club's manager Neil Warnock. Is that piece there? You do hear that from time to time. Alex Ferguson was another one who was in that boat at one stage of his career, who I think successfully defended any allegations of wrongdoing against him and his son as well. And Ian Henderson looks to be back in for the Irish rugby team as well, as the other story there. Finally for me for the minute, it's the Irish Times. Badly needed victory eases the pressure on Sarri and Chelsea. I mean, does it really? Chelsea winning 2-1 at Malmo last night. Does it really ease the pressure on them? In a lot of ways you kind of think that it does.
I'd say Roman Abramovich doesn't know what the Europa League is.
Well, exactly. We've just been describing this tournament as a bit of a secondary tournament. I can't imagine Chelsea or their fans are overly enamoured about it one way or the other. Celtic beaten 2-0 at home against Valencia, so it's off to the Mestalla for the return leg, and they're 2-0 down, and Arsenal slip with Lacazette denied goal and sent off. That's the Irish Times this morning.
Back page of the Irish Daily Mail goes with humiliation, and a picture there of Alexandre Lacazette with two hands kind of cradling his face after he got sent off last night for a fairly stupid swinging of the arm on a Bate Borisov player. They've lost 1-0 last night. Son lands bumper new deal at Spurs as well, says the back of the Irish Daily Mail. So he got a pay rise last year to up to around £110,000 a week, and now he's looking to go up to around £150,000 a week, closer to Dele Alli level. So he's been an unbelievable performer.
He's worth it, isn't he? Because he surely will be attracting interest from some of the bigger clubs as well if there was any sense that he might be in a position to leave that club.
For sure. Heung-min Son has become the most highly rated, underrated player currently playing in the Premier League.
Hipster's choice.
Hipster's choice, except now hipsters are ditching him because everybody is talking about him. Also an interesting one here by Philip Lanigan on the back of the Irish Daily Mail. Curfin denies spying on rivals Guidor. So Kevin Cassidy's been stirring the pot this week. He says, we came to Dublin to play St. Bridget's in a challenge match, and they had 2 or 3 cameras there filming the game. They have everything tied down. That's why they're at the top, because they leave nothing to chance. But then the Currafin chairman has come out to deny this. Michael Ryder has said, any neutral is entitled to go to a match, but we had no one picked to go there. We didn't even know they were playing. We heard about it after, all right, but no, we don't go there. So no spying going on. So Guidor not falling victim to Marcelo Bielsa-esque tactic.
It wasn't just even one camera, it was like a 3-camera setup. There's nothing subtle about that.
Just a vision mixer there, like mixing everything from a Currafin perspective is what they had. Like at least Guidor kind of know what it's like, because of course Donegal are experts in the old spying game.
It always comes back to the little bit of a Kerry angle.
Well, you know, it didn't work out for them in the end, did it?
A tree that's been since chopped down, in case anybody missed that when we spoke about it a couple of weeks ago. Will a week go by where we won't mention Donegal spying on Kerry? I don't think so.
No, every week.
Long may it last.
If you can make it happen every day, that'd be my ideal situation. Back page of the Herald is small worry for Jim. Dubstar and Kerry player hit with bans from Ali in Tralee. I've also gone with the rhyming slang there. Like the John Small thing, like they say small worry for Jim. Like it is a bit of a worry. Just a little bit of a worry, because from my mind, John Small was playing really well last Saturday night, flying, and I think when you're in that position where a lot of players are coming back from pre-season, everybody who's hit the ground running is vitally important. You look at someone like James McCarthy as well, in the same sort of realm as John Small, as somebody who's hit this league in very, very good form. They play Mayo next. If they get beaten by Mayo, it's kind of curtains on their league final preparations, or on their league final hopes, I should say, because I would say that Jim Gavin probably wants another crack at the league final, does he?
I'd say
he gave the option.
They could be relegated.
I'm not saying relegation. I'm still very much keeping Dublin in the league final picture here.
All right.
Because they are Dublin, and there's every chance they just go and win the rest of their games.
Yeah, we'll see.
If they win the rest of their games, they probably make the league final.
Yeah, I mean, they surely will. But
because Kerry and Mayo will slip up at further.
Any word on Cluxton?
Cluxton, it hasn't been said yet, but you presume he's going to come back very shortly. I just don't know what the situation is with Stephen Cluxton.
Just hasn't played yet.
Just hasn't played yet, is right. Back page of the Mirror is the price of failure. Mourinho pocketed £15 million payoff from United despite being axed as season fell apart. And the back of the Star shows Brendan Rodgers and Scott Brown, boys facing Europa exit. They were beaten 2-0 by Valencia at home last night. And you've also got that Kerry and Dublin story, banned Small and Obiogliach facing suspension. And you've also got that Jose story. Plenty of League of Ireland preview as well. A 12-page pullout in the Irish Daily Star this morning. Back of the Sun then is Red Mist. Pog thumped Locker in rage at sending off. And Ole gave Stars the hairdryer over Euro flop, I should say. It's an exclusive by Neil Custis and Richard Moriarty in the Sun this morning. An angry dressing room apparently after the Paris Saint-Germain defeat. Pogba punched the Locker. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer shouted at his players. Incredible scenes from a defeated dressing room. And JT held enough for Rice. So this is another exclusive. Declan Rice chose to play for England after seeking out the advice of John Terry. West Ham star turned his back on Ireland and asked FIFA let him switch, etc, etc. And the key to the move was John Terry. I'm trying to find the actual quote here. If I turn to page 48, I'm sure I'll be able to stumble upon a quote, but actually there isn't any quotes about this. But I'm sure John Terry did have a word with him, a vital character perhaps in how Declan Rice views modern English centre-backs, because of course he is one of them now, isn't he? He's an English centre-back. It kind of feels hard to actually say that at this point. Declan Rice is of that ilk. So.
Yeah, it's the John Terry friendship is something that's been spoken of for a while, and I certainly at some point or another remember reading something that I thought, there's not a friendship here. It's just that they're acquainted with each other and there's some infrequent contact. But I mean, we were always onto a bit of a loser, to be fair, if he was going to ring John Terry and say, "What should I do, pal?" Weren't we?
Yeah.
Do you know what, Declan? The best thing for you, I think, would be to declare for the Republic of Ireland.
Could have rang Richard Dunn as well.
Unlikely.
Back page of the Racing Post is aiming high. Watford can stay on course for first final since 1984. They're up against Queen's Park Rangers tonight in the FA Cup. It kicks off at 7:45. And the back page of the Guardian then finally is a picture of Olivier Giroud and Ross Barkley as they won in the Europa League last night. Europa gain and pain then is the headline beside that, because they talk about Arsenal getting beaten in Belarus to Bate Borisov, and the £20 million farewell as well. Across most of the back pages today, Jose Mourinho's a rich man.
All right, we're going to talk boxing with Gareth A Davies in just a little bit. He's going to join us on the line from Connecticut to discuss the news that Anthony Joshua is going to fight a big baby in Madison Square Garden in June. And it's a big baby who wears a bloody big nappy. Have you seen this guy?
Yes. He's obviously been doing the rounds for a while. He's always going to be on the radar for one of these guys.
Yeah.
But if you told me 12 months ago that Anthony Joshua was going to be the person who'd step up and fight him, I would actually kind of be a little bit surprised.
Isn't it like almost, we'll discuss with Gareth, but it feels like actually that's exactly where Anthony Joshua's at.
Unfortunately so, from his perspective. I don't think it's been a very good 6, 7, 8 months for Anthony Joshua, despite the fact that he's still got that pristine record going.
Yeah.
Like, there is, like, I'm not saying he's anywhere close to the level of padding his record at this point.
Yeah.
But there is a point where you're sitting tight for a little bit too long. Now, there has been some suggestion, and granted, this is from Tyson Fury, that the Eddie Hearn camp were pretty tough to negotiate with from a Deontay Wilder perspective last year, because we thought that fight might have happened. And then Deontay Wilder's camp were like, nah, we're not having whatever terms you wanted. And then the Wilder camp decided to go with Tyson Fury instead. Now, granted, that information comes from Tyson Fury, so it was in his interest to say that. But still, there are things coming out, there are things being said, and the idea that this Wembley fight is now not happening in April, it seems, is a pretty big blow, because like you kind of look at the atmosphere in Wembley and you're like, geez, that'd be a good thing to go to.
90,000 people.
Well, exactly, and I'm sure there was people before Christmas, boxing fans in the UK and in Ireland, who were thinking to themselves, I'd love to go see Anthony Joshua in his pomp, and I'd love to go over to Wembley and watch him.
There's a sport that you're probably better off being at than watching on TV.
Yes.
Because you get probably the best of both worlds. Like, largely they're not 90,000 seater stadiums. Like, even Madison Square Garden is nowhere near that. That mostly they're like, even the biggest sort of UFC fights or boxing fights that are in Vegas, actually the live audience is pretty small, so it's pretty wherever you are, you're going to get a pretty good view, and you've also got monster screens to see any of the sort of replays between rounds and stuff like that. So there's a sport definitely better off being out than watching on TV.
Have you been to a big fight night?
I went to see Katie Taylor in London 2012. I don't know, do you describe that as a big fight night?
Great atmosphere there.
Been to the National Stadium for some fights. I've been to Madison Square Garden when there's been no boxing on. And that's about it, I think, yeah. You?
No, I'm not. I'm trying to think.
When's Bernard Dunn win his world title fight?
I was thinking anybody who's working in the sports industry 10 years ago. It's coming up on the 10-year anniversary of that. And
is it really? Wow.
Like, where did everybody watch the big game that day as well? Because obviously it was Grand Slam decider day.
That was the world title fight that you were talking about.
Sorry, what are you talking about?
I was actually at the Grand Slam game that day in Cardiff. I wasn't at the world title fight. I was at the fight that he got beaten by Kiko Martinez in 10 seconds, whatever it was. So that's my track record of going to see boxing.
You're just a bad luck for boxing in general, except for Katie Taylor.
I mean, except for, you know,
got a checkered record.
Greatest thing to have ever happened in Irish boxing.
Best out of 3 is up next. It would be great to see some of those huge fight nights come back to Ireland again. I know they're very rare, and not every country, except for like the superpowers of the UK and USA, can actually claim to have them. That we were lucky to have got one, but you'd still kind of like them to return a small bit. Maybe if the likes of Michael Conlon go on and reach the heights that he can possibly reach over the next couple of years, we'll actually get to that level. Yeah. But like I don't think anything in the short term will get to the level of the Bernard Dunn mania.
You have a lot of live sport catching up to do, by the way.
Yes, I do. You know, I always I've left the tickets to this point to the genuine fans. Now it's time to think. Now it's time to do an Adrian.
Are you going to work at the League of Ireland tonight? Or are you going to go in? So you're going to like buy a ticket and go in, or are you going to go in on like? So you're not going to get like a season ticket and sort of go in with that?
No.
All right. Okay.
Why would I do that?
Just a thought. The only thing I can expand on my. No, I'll leave that. Going to talk GAA next. James O'Connor is standing by. It's a busy weekend of the hurling. We're going to get his thoughts on all of that. Before that, Dahi Regan was on the show, the hurling show last night, and he was talking about his impressions of a very special Limerick team that seemed pretty intent on building upon last year's All-Ireland success.
In Division 1, in the premium division, I think it's been very interesting. I mean, Limerick is All-Ireland champions, without a doubt, and obviously are the standout package. I mean, their performance against Tipperary in the second half sent out reverberations for me, and if it hasn't done, it should do from the other contenders, because in every aspect of where Limerick are and what Limerick are doing at the moment, that was pretty extraordinary, that second half.
In what way?
A lot of people seem to. Well, it was the sheer dominance. Man for man, it was the sheer dominance. It was the strength, the physicality. It was the power. It was the confidence. It was the depth in the squad and the depth in the bench that they had. It was the surety that they played with. For All-Ireland champions, I mean, there doesn't seem to be any residue there whatsoever of tiredness or a lack of sharpness, or let's try and blood as many of the squad players as we can and target kind of May, the latter end of May, for championship. This is a team that's gone out to win every single game, and I applaud them for taking that route and that stance on things, because winning just creates an incredible mentality. Physically, the physique of the Limerick players hasn't dropped one iota in the space of the last 4 or 5 months. There's been no evidence whatsoever that the celebrations have in any way sated the appetite. And I've said this before, I don't recollect seeing a bunch of players or management so focused after winning an All-Ireland.
James O'Connor, good morning to you.
Morning, Adrian.
I don't know how much of that you go along with, but anybody who's sort of been reading any of the reports this morning from Ennis last night can even further buy into that theory that Limerick are going to walk it again this year.
Well, I wouldn't quite go that far. It's still very early days, Adrian. It's the middle of February. But certainly, I mean, as Dahi alluded to there, what we've seen so far from Limerick has been, really impressive. And, I was in Cusack Park for that Fitzgibbon semi-final yesterday as well, and I thought Galan was magnificent. It wasn't so much, it was the flashy things that he did, the scores he got, whatever, but it was the bread and butter stuff, the ball winning, the selfless, the hook and the block and the tackling, the laying off, passes to players in better positions. And, I thought, as Dahi said, he was in, unbelievable physical condition, looks to have got physically stronger. And Joe O'Connor was the Limerick strength and conditioning coach, who was with Clare back in 2013 as was regarded as one of the top guys in the country. And certainly, the Limerick players look like them. Yeah, they haven't dropped their standards, and with the depth they have, they're the benchmark now for everybody else. Just
like Galan scored 9 points a couple of weeks ago, 112 last night. I know you're saying it's not all about the scores, but is there something else you're seeing about him that he's sort of ready almost to kick it on a level again? I mean, despite bloody phenomenal 2018. Kick it on again this year.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, he looked like the best player on the pitch yesterday. He looked like a guy who, had an All-Ireland medal and played with the pies, I suppose, and the confidence, of having done that. And, Luke Meade was on the pitch, and, Thomas Monaghan and Conor Whelan, and Whelan did some good things on limited ball, but Galan just looked, as I said, like a class apart, and a fella that was, playing at the peak of his powers, and he's still whatever, 22 years of age, so there's arguably better to come from this guy. So, if I was John Kiley and I was getting reports from Ennis yesterday, I'd be a happy man. And obviously, the depth Limerick are building with Peter Casey, these other guys trying to break into the team as well. They're in a very, very strong position. But Adrian, Kilkenny would feel that they had every chance to beat Limerick last year. Certainly Clare, Cork, Tipperary, the other Munster contenders will feel that, on their day, Limerick aren't that far ahead of them. But certainly, from what we've seen to date, as I said, they are the bar for everybody else. And there seems to be, in terms of the way they handle the success, a real hunger that, this isn't going to be a one-off. This is a team that plans and wants to win more. And as I said, that's a reflection of how well John Kiley has managed them.
The interesting thing there is that they seem to have got stronger physically than they have last year. They haven't just kind of plateaued or got back to where they were at physically last year. They actually seem to have gone up another notch. They look bigger. And this is something we've seen with Galway over the last couple of years, Jamesy, that Galway were kind of seeing. And if you were at a match, you'd see that they're kind of towering figures. Is this kind of a sign of where hurling might be going over the next couple of years, that if you're bigger, you've got a better chance of actually getting into teams?
Yeah, I mean, again, this was I'm not a strength and conditioning expert, but I'd imagine that, when Joe O'Connor or the strength and conditioning coaches take over, they're working to a plan, and often these plans, it's not a 1 year plan, it's maybe a 3, 4, 5 year plan. And the Limerick guys are probably into year 2 or year 3 of that programme, and they're doing the work in the off season, and it's not like these guys now let themselves go or lose the gains that they made. If anything, they hold on to them and then add to them and build on them. So yeah, listen, power is obviously a kind of big role to play in the modern game, and you can't but be impressed with the physique of the Limerick squad. And as you said, the Galway guys certainly have got bigger, and they're a big physical team anyway. But their interest is look at probably year 3 or year 4 of these programs, and you can certainly see the gains that they're making year on year.
If it is a case that they've been looking at the other players and it sounds the other teams, and it sounds like it probably is, and bulking up on the back of that, it strikes me that it probably would have been almost easier for John Kiley and the management team in some ways to have gone, well, look, we did it this way in 2018, it worked then, we're just going to go with the same thing again. Like there's there's a bit of a bravery around tweaking stuff like that, because the impact of that physical thing, it could be anything. We see it with golfers quite frequently, that it puts their, if they bulk up or if they lose significant amount of weight, in some cases it throws them off kilter a little bit. There's an inherent risk almost involved with that.
Yeah, but I don't necessarily think that they're bulking up or putting on muscle mass for the sake of it. I think it's probably as part of a program. And these guys, a lot of them are young. They're still growing. They're still getting stronger. And I think the big thing is it doesn't seem to have impacted or impinged in any way on their hurling. And as I said, Galan was ripped yesterday, but certainly his touch, his strike, and everything about his game was where you'd want it to be, and where you'd expect to see it come summer. I thought he was so sharp yesterday, but it was his ability to win his own possession. And Kilkenny and Clare, I was at that game in Ennis obviously 2 weeks ago, and again, both sides impressed me again with their physical conditioning. So I don't necessarily think that Limerick are miles ahead of everybody else in that department, but they are the barristers, and they're maybe the ones that the focus is probably on, that it maybe doesn't appear to be on the other teams in the competition. But that's not to say that Kilkenny and Clare and Tip and the other Division 1A teams aren't doing the same work and the same type of work in the gym. Yeah,
and Limerick are at Kilkenny on Sunday at Nolan Park. Sunday 2 o'clock throw in there. Did you say you were at the Kilkenny game a couple of weeks ago?
I was at the Kilkenny Clare game, yeah, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a cracking contest. Clare obviously were coming off the disappointing performance in Thurles, and Kilkenny had opened up with the win. And Kilkenny have come to Ennis a couple of times in the past when Clare have needed to rebound, and Clare have taken their scalps. So Kilkenny were going to be up for it, and they were. And it was a proper contest from the off, a really, really good game. And I thought Clare played really, really well, and it was a lot of positive things from them. Shane Golan was excellent in the middle of the field. Conor Cleary played really well centre back. Some of the younger players did well. And at the same time, Cody will, I think, have taken a lot of positives out of it as well, because, okay, Clare maybe were 5 clear, and then Kevin Kelly, or 4 clear, and Kevin Kelly got a late goal that maybe, obviously narrowed the gap. But, Hugh Lawler thought that a lot of good things at full back, and that's a key position for them, because Pádraig Walsh came on towards the end, and in his favour, probably wing back position, and automatically Kilkenny looked stronger forward. And Kilkenny were down quite a few players. Killian Buckley didn't play. Obviously, the Ballyhale contingent weren't there, and I thought, okay, they didn't come away with the points, but I still thought there were a lot of positives for Kilkenny, and obviously Clare to take away from that game.
Yeah, that's obviously like a key point you touched on there, is the Hugh Lawler factor at full back for Kilkenny. Are you seeing that this is going to be a concrete thing for Brian Cody going forward towards the summer? Because, as you say, the knock-on effect of having Pádraig Welsh out on the wing is humongous, Jamesy, because this is the sort of thing that can actually change. This could be a 4 or 5 point swing if they manage to take this all the way through to the summer.
It could, yeah, because you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, and I don't think he's serviceable as a full back, and he didn't let them down. In any of those games last year, okay, Liam Rush maybe caused him a couple of problems in the first game against Dublin, but in terms of what he gives them going forward, wing back, especially, with Buckley in that half back line as well, suddenly it's a platform. It's potentially a really dominant line, and I think the only way he's going to find out about Hugh Lawler is to see him, coming up against, the Seamus Flanagans and the John Conlons and so on. And Conlon is as big a handful as anybody in the country. And, okay, maybe Conlon had 1 or 2 moments, but I thought by and large, the fullback acquitted himself quite well. And I think, as I said, Cody will see what he's capable of in these games, and that's the best barometer in terms of whether he can cut it when it really matters. And there were plenty of positives, I think, for Cody to take away, from him and from some of the other performances that he saw in it.
What sort of hurling is it from Kilkenny that you're looking at, Jamesy? Because they it seemed as if, I don't know if it's the conditions of the pitches or the time of the year or whatever, but they were playing a pretty sort of short, almost possession-based game, maybe against Cork. What were you seeing from them? Yeah,
listen, again, going short when it's on, keeping possession, and that's just the way the game has evolved now. That there's one ball in the pitch, and teams are loath to give it away, and like, considering the players they have to come back into it, and the first maybe choice players that they were missing. I still thought that they played a lot of good hurling. Their half forward line struggled a little bit in the second half. The Clare half back line got on top. Cleary was excellent centre back, and Colin Malone had a really good game on the wing as well. And both those guys were dominant in the air. And some of the Kilkenny supporters around me were, I was just lamenting maybe the lack of ball winning ability in the half forward line. So that might have been maybe an area of concern. But yeah, look at just trying to play that possession game, trying to take the right option, and they got a lot of good scores. And as I said, Clare, were 5 clear, but it didn't feel like Clare were that comfortable. And Kelly's goal, obviously, from the lead ball narrowed it, right at the end. But it was a proper contest right the way through, and it was a game that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, they were. Obviously, Clare were so close in so many ways last year, and did so well in Munster, obviously, and picked up a fair bit of criticism after the tip game. You said it earlier on. It's very difficult to, in some ways, read too much, particularly in that first round where the conditions were pretty grim in a lot of ways right around the country at that stage. Just from a Clare perspective, what are you seeing? Are any new players in, tweak of systems? What are you seeing?
Yeah, well, Colin Gilfoyle, had a very, very good Munster League campaign. Again, he's a big physical player. He was playing for Mary I yesterday. Yeah. So they're getting a look at him. Diarmuid Ryan, who Connor was centre back in 2013. He's an exciting prospect. He played well, worked very, very hard at wing forward. Aidan McCarthy didn't play the last day, but I thought played quite well against Tipperary. Gary Cooney again played for Mary I yesterday. So there are some good young players, and Golden is kind of back from injury, and maybe he's a little bit older now, and maybe appreciates the opportunity he's been given. And as I said, I thought he was fantastic for Clare in the middle of the field. Everybody, Adrian, I think, is trying to build depth. We saw that Limerick, particularly in the semi-final last year against Cork, were able to go into the bench and improve the team and give the team that infusion of energy, that maybe that kick that got them over the line. And Cork probably, didn't have that same depth. And that's, I think, what every team now is looking for. Can we find two or three players that will, can make the difference coming off the bench, and especially given the nature of the championship and how attritional it's going to be with the games in close proximity, you're going to need 18, 19, 20, 21 players, and I think that's that's the big thing for management now. Out of this league, can we solve maybe one or two problem positions? Fullback for Kilkenny been maybe one possible example, and find a couple of guys that have shown us that they're capable of living at this level.
Yeah, it certainly seems that the league hasn't been affected too much by the lack of relegation. I think we were all worried that the league would just completely fade into irrelevance, Jamesy, but it's actually been pretty decent so far. And looking at all the fixtures this weekend, everything that's on TV, I'm certainly watching them.
Yeah, again, it's just, obviously the lack of relegation. People thought that we made the assumption maybe that would maybe take the edge off it. That certainly wasn't apparent in Ennis. As I said, it was a proper contest, and Limerick and Tip the night before was exactly as you'd expect it to be as well. At the end of the day, I mean, look, at players want to play in these games, and underfoot conditions in Ennis, were really good. The pitch is really good there. It was good yesterday for that Fitzgibbon semi-final, and you'd hope that the weather is only going to pick up as well. Yeah. So. Yeah, I think there's been no dilution of the competitiveness, and especially when you have maybe some new faces and managers maybe have a bit more scope for experimentation. With the same pressure arguably not been there, the guys that are out there want to impress, and they want to win these games. And as I said, it's still very early. It's still the middle of February. But if it's a foretaste of what's to come, I think we're in for another really exciting season.
Jamesy, really good to take the call. Thanks a million.
No problem, guys. Talk to you.
Thanks for that. James O'Connor on the line there. Looking ahead to the weekends. Hurling, we're going to talk boxing, rugby, Ronan O'Gara on the way, Alan Quinlan standing by. Darren Cleary up next with all the latest in the world of live sport. But before that, Kevin Kilbane has been on the airwaves of all varieties during the week. Only one real topic obviously at hand. It's the what he calls farcical nature of Declan Rice's international switch. And he says a rule change is now an absolute necessity.
I've been in there. And I can tell you now, every one of the players, when I was part of that squad, when you had a lad come in, I might hang fire on that, were pissed off at it. Every single one of them that were in the squad. And I doubt it's changed. It's only 8 years later. It hasn't changed. And if it has changed, I'd be very, very surprised. Really, really surprised. That as soon as Declan Rice has turned down the chance to go and play alongside those players, that he would be welcomed back 100% within that side, because in the back of your mind you've got someone who was willing to jump ship. That's what it is, and he has jumped ship now. Thanks very much. On you go. I've got no problem. Everyone thinks that there's no problem in my mind, for him declaring for England. I couldn't give a toss about that. I really couldn't. It's no issue to me, that. But the problem being is that he has, as you say, used the shirt, auditioned for better things by playing for us, and. Yeah, under 21s, I understand it to an extent, maybe at 18s, 19s, or whatever it would be. But when you're getting on the 21 level, you know, certainly when you get into senior level, it shouldn't even be. He shouldn't even be talked about. That's it. The rule has to change. Simply has to change in my mind, because it's a farce.
Kevin Kilbane on the show. You can check out that full piece. He's got some very strong things to say. It's up on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/offtheball. So go and check that out. Do keep your comments coming into us. We've lots up for discussion this morning. We have rugby to come. Ronan O'Gara standing by in Auckland, I think, and Alan Quinlan a little bit closer to home. I'll be joining us in the studio very shortly. But before all of that, Darren, good morning to you.
Good morning, Adrian.
League of Ireland hipster beside you there. I don't know if you've been listening to Eoin is going to dip his toe. You'll be one of the long-established hipsters of League of Ireland fandom.
Yeah, I was on the League of Ireland before it was fashionable to be on the League of Ireland.
You've got splinters, you go against the grain so much.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a lifelong Shells fan, so don't hold it against me if you're a fan of Rovers or Pats or Cork or Dundalk. But I've
already taken deep offence to that.
Yeah, do you want to make the case? Because he's currently a floating voter, which may change tonight.
I'd love him to go to Shells, because this is a great time to go, because they're probably going to win the first division. There'll be a big buzz there. There's a new investor, a new owner, a young manager just retired from football, left Bowes, Ian Morris, put together a really solid squad. We've the best striker in the first division in Kieran Kilduff, who left Dundalk to go away to Jacksonville and is back now in Ireland and playing for Shells. We've a great chance of being promoted. Yeah. The good times are rolling in Talca Park.
It's double hipster because it's first division. So
hipster.
I'll definitely go to the Shells.
That's my sales.
Are you going tonight?
I can't go tonight.
Darren!
I can't go tonight. Shells aren't playing tonight. The first division starts next week. Come on, lads. Shells start against Galway next week.
You said I can't go tonight. Myself at home were thinking, you're going for a few pints or something instead.
No. The first division starts next week. Stop.
So you're going to go to Bowes tonight, and then next week you're going to promise now on air that
I'm not in the country next weekend, but the weekend after that, I'll.
Where are you going?
I don't know why I said that. I'm going to be in Budapest next weekend.
Right.
You're going to remind me of this, and we're going to have a good conversation
about
this.
Budapest?
No doubt next week. It's Myself and a few mates are going over.
Be careful, because the last time you went on holidays, you got a box in the head.
Exactly. So no box. I didn't get a box in the head, but I won't come back with any more scars.
Which are you in Buda or in Pest?
Don't know, actually. I need to check the address. I'll get the Airbnb details and get back to you on that.
The Gellert Baths. I highly recommend check out the Gellert Baths.
Yeah.
They're like old Roman style baths where you go in and essentially get your kit off and just hang out in Roman baths. It's well worthwhile.
Yeah, hanging out in Roman baths is certainly what something's going to... Yeah, I'll make sure to check that out, Adrian.
I look forward to your report afterwards.
I don't know how we got there.
It could be the next time we go.
What?
You know, the travel programme.
Oh, yeah. That's exactly what came to my mind when you said I could be the next time you go as well.
Right, Darren, kick us off.
I'll save you from yourself. Irish football fans haven't had a lot to be pleased with this week, with Declan Rice defecting to England, but it is Christmas Eve for Irish football fans because the League of Ireland is back and the champions Dundalk begin a new era in the familiar surrounds of Oriel Park. Sligo Rovers provide the opposition. The double winners start life without Stephen Kenny, but his right-hand man, Vinnie Perth, is now pulling the strings. Rory Higgins and John Gill also part of the management setup as Dundalk go in search of a fifth league title this decade. The match comes too early for Jamie McGrath, who's almost ready for a return to action. Jordan Flores is in contention to make the squad. He's working his way back to match fitness. Now, John Gill is confident Dundalk will still be the Dundalk fans know and are accustomed to, despite losing the man who transformed them, Stephen Kenny.
Maybe what people tend to forget is that it wasn't only Stephen that won the leagues. It's players win games. Managers get too much credit when things go well, and they get too much stick when things don't go well. It was a team effort up there. That's no fault of Stephen's. Stephen is, he was the one, the figurehead. But really, it comes down to players. And once you've good players with good habits, with hunger and motivation, that's what wins trophies.
Now, St. Pat's aim to plot a path into Europe this season. That's the goal of their new manager, Harry Kenny. The Dubliner replaced Liam Buckley at Richmond Park. The opening night pits them against Cork City. Chris Forrester, one of the most gifted players ever to grace a League of Ireland pitch. He's back at Inchicore, and here's why.
It wasn't too difficult, if I'm honest with you. I've been talking to Chris over the last number of months. I've been keeping an eye on him. I've noticed he hadn't been playing with Aberdeen. He had a good season with Peterborough season before that, but when he went to Aberdeen, he wasn't doing so well. So I spoke to him on the phone a couple of times, and it was difficult enough to get him out because Aberdeen didn't want to let him out. But in the end, not that he forced his way out, he just wanted to come home and be happy again and start playing football, and we were delighted that he came our way.
We saw in his previous spells with Pats and with Bows how brilliant he can be as a player. What is it about Chris Forrester that makes him so special?
He's fantastic ability on the ball. He sees passes. He's a good dribbler of the ball. He's a technician. He's very, very good, and he's a great creator of chances. And he's not a bad goal scorer himself. So, yeah, he's got everything a footballer could have. We're just trying to improve his fitness at the minute. He hasn't had too much game time at Aberdeen, so we're getting there with him. But we're delighted to have him.
Now, Shamrock Rovers begin their quest to recapture the SSE Airtricity League title tonight. The Hoops begin their campaign away to Waterford. Owen has mentioned he's soon to be a League of Ireland fan, but he's not the most high-profile person to buy into the League of Ireland. Dolly Parton, now a fan. There she is with some Shamrock Rovers players.
She's a bigger League of Ireland fan than me, I think.
Yep, that is a cardboard cutout of Dolly Parton. They have partnered with Dolly Parton's Imagination Library, which works to gift books to young children across the world. And from today, they're making books available free to all children aged up to 5 years old in Dublin 24. Pictured there are Dolly Parton's likeness in cardboard form, Aaron McInnes, Ronan Finn and Daniel Carr.
I legitimately thought that was a real Dolly Parton.
Yeah,
and
me too.
I just kind of was there accepting the fact, she was just there with Waterford players.
Rovers players.
I just accepted it.
Can we see it again? Do you really think that's Dolly Parton?
I thought it was too, I have to say, yeah, it's pretty good.
You didn't bat an eyelid though when I said Dolly Parton there, a League of Ireland fan. You were underwhelmed by that.
Well,
prospect of it.
I've been told it's the greatest league in the world.
And so also she's an incredibly smart, astute businesswoman, Dolly Parton, and that would seem like an incredibly smart, astute business decision.
To get in the League of Ireland bandwagon while it's popular. Owen, does that sway you? Dolly Parton's on for Rovers now. Are you thinking about them?
Yeah, 100% I am, yeah. Huge Dolly Parton fan here. So Rovers next up. But only if
Rovers till I die.
Me and the cardboard cutout.
Now, Bows start their campaign at home with a match against Finn Harps. Newly promoted UCD face a very tricky trip to Derry. The champions Dundalk, of course, begin against Sligo Rovers. Those games start 7:45 this evening, the start time for all 5 games in the Premier Division. The First Division kicks off next week. There is a full and comprehensive preview to the League of Ireland season. It's Jamie Moore and Off the Ball's League of Ireland podcast on all our social channels and the website offtheball.com. Now, the Arsenal manager Unai Emery is confident they can overturn the deficit against Bate Borisov. They lost 1-0 in Belarus in the first leg of their last 32 tie in the Europa League last night. Ross Barkley scored his first European goal for Chelsea. They beat Malmo 2-1 in their first leg. Now, Celtic could be heading for an early exit from the competition. Goals from Denis Cheryshev and Ruben Sobrino saw Valencia comfortably beat the Hoops 2-0. Now, John Small and Brino Bugliak will be punished for their roles in a brawl that broke out in the Kerry-Dublin game last week. The trouble began after the final whistle as the Kingdom edged a cracking encounter by a single point. The Central Competitions Control Committee has singled out Small and O'Bugliak for punishment, while both players have been proposed for 1-match ban. Small's punishment will be doubled, as it's the second time in the space of 12 months that he has been found guilty of a Category 3 offence. It follows a straight red card and last year's Leinster final win over Laois. Now, hurlers are being warned of the dangers of modifying their helmets after one player sustained an horrific hand injury from a metal bar in a modified face guard. In the February edition of the Irish Medical Journal, doctors called for the rules around helmet modifications to be enforced by referees. Before we show you the picture of the injury, anyone with some sensitivities to injuries of hands of gruesome nature, please look away now. This is what happened.
If you're squeamish, don't look.
Don't look.
Jesus.
That was the case of one club player who had a metal bar from an opponent's face guard penetrate his ring finger and exit his little finger. The experts say, we believe that there is a lack of awareness among players and coaches as to the dangers of helmet modification. These modifications are responsible for some of the most serious injuries sustained in hurling. Adrian, why did you look if you were...
Is that sound you were making an impression of the person who had a metal bar in his hand?
I'm not good with... I would be the sort of person... I felt obliged, given that I'm here chatting to you in the studio, but if I was at home not being required to look at that, I wouldn't have been looking at it. It's grim.
It's really bad.
People are modifying their helmets to
see better.
Modification is what? Taking out a couple of sections of it or what?
Yeah.
And then, so how did he end up with that?
I'm not quite sure how he would have ended up in that situation where the bar was still...
Maybe you would take out a couple of the bars and move them slightly to the side or something.
Perhaps. Or maybe bent it up the way to see. I'm not too sure. But
Jesus Christ.
One of the doctors actually from the Irish Medical Journal is named Eoin Sheehan.
Well,
so one of the 3 doctors that published
Eoin Sheehan or Eoin Sheehan?
He's Eoin Sheehan. He's the real Eoin Sheehan.
Right.
I'm a League of Ireland fan, I'm a travel journalist, and I am a doctor.
The final word on that is they say that as footwear studs are checked prior to rugby or soccer and gloves inspected in combat sports, the inspection of safety equipment should become mandatory pre-match checklist for any referee or match official. So they're calling on referees and officials to actually look at helmets and see whether or not they have been modified or changed in a way that could make them dangerous to the player wearing them or the player in opposition to the player wearing them.
Right. That's you?
That's me.
Just before you go, just to give you a bit of a flavour of what you can expect on your jollies, there you go.
Wow, lovely.
I know you were mocking me when I suggested earlier on. You were like...
Well, not really. It's just such an obvious thing to suggest when you go to that city.
That's not really...
I've been there. It doesn't look like that.
No, there's an internal section to it. This is what we're looking at.
That's what I'm...
You see the shorts that lad's wearing there? Yeah. Mostly there's no shorts. They give you a sheet. If you want to wear the sheet, you can wear the sheet. If you don't want to wear the sheet, don't worry about it.
I wouldn't imagine a sheet would hold up fairly well in water, but
it doesn't hold up at all well. The shorts.
I'll certainly remember not to bring any swimming garments then.
If you're hoping to meet any women there, Owen, I'm just going to let you know in advance, you will not meet any women there.
Thank you very much.
When I went there, it was not one woman in the place.
So they have a men's, women and a women's section. I found this out having been there with a woman, and we went in and went, this is great, I'll see you inside, and we'll go in and have a chat. I was like, there seems to be a lot of men around here. I wonder when she'll be,
And she ditched you and you never saw her again?
Exactly.
Like the old school playground. The lines are divided, you cannot cross the other side of the playground.
Darren, thanks, William.
Cheers, guys.
Owen, enjoy Budapest. Sharing his frustration with
the... They're going to be here, like...
Shambolic Declan Rice saga. Kevin Kilbane was, there's endless clips of Kevin Kilbane this week speaking about Declan Rice, and here's another one. The issue affecting Irish soccer, likened it to the issue afflicting Irish soccer, to that which is providing such astounding comfort to Irish rugby.
So I'm 24 years of age. I've not played for any country, and all of a sudden I start to progress and do well, and I get called up by England. I honestly couldn't have stood there and listened to the national anthem and as I say, have that pride that's within you. Half of the pride when you're playing for your country is listening to the anthem, knowing what it means to you and your family. That's half of it. Now you're taking all that out of it, and I know. And again, it may be something that Gary said last night, and maybe I'm a total romantic in that respect, and I get that. I know that a lot of people don't feel like me in that respect. But it's there for us. It's there for that. In my mind, is how it is. When you're growing up, you should play for the country that you actually see the flag, listen to the anthem, and everything that entails. Because that is what's within you. That's what it means to play for that country. I don't necessarily think because somebody comes and moves over, say someone came over and moved to England, and because they've moved to England, they were born in Australia, wherever it was, then they can qualify to play for Northern Ireland, for Scotland, for Wales, for England, or whoever it would be. There's no allegiance to the country. There is absolutely nothing within that. The rule states you can play, brilliant. Do I want to get on board with our rugby side where we're actually just nationalising people that have been in the country for 3 or 4 years? No, I do not. They're not Irish, so why are they playing for our country? That's the way that it is. That's the way that I think. I can't change my mind on that. It's how I was brought up from a boy. So I don't know what you want me to say here. Yes, I understand that people have different opinions from me and people think differently from me. I'm not going to change my mind on it and get on board with that statement that Declan Rice has made, that I'm a proud Englishman. I can't get on board with that because it's total rubbish.
Kevin Kilbane, as mentioned, some strong things to say in relation to the Declan Rice saga. That's not gone away, unfortunately. That's the way that is. Ronan O'Gara is going to join us very shortly. Alan Quinlan, good morning to you.
Good morning, Adrian.
Where are you at with Declan Rice? Are you...
I tell you, there's a tweet that PJ Gallagher put up, if the lads want to find it, and I liked it, and it said something along the lines of... I hope he poos in his pants for the next 2 years every time he plays.
He's not wishing him well, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm a little bit like that. It's a money move, and it's a...
I hope Declan Rice shites his shorts every match for a year.
Right, I didn't want to say that.
I think it's an unlikely wish to come true. But I mean, the comparison's been made obviously with there's been a whole bunch of players that have... It's a different scenario, but there's a whole bunch of players obviously that come into Ireland and assumed nationalisation at some point or another. And like the idea that, and I know Kevin has no time for this argument whatsoever, but that the idea of nationalism has changed now, and it takes on a whole bunch of different guises.
It takes on what's best for me. Yeah. It's not what I feel and who I'm loyal to. It's what's best for me. And that's the commonality
between the CJ Standers and the Bundy Ackies and the Declan Rices.
So there's a perception that the CJ Stander and Bundy Aki and these guys came here specifically to play for Ireland, which I don't think they did. I think they came here with the opportunity for Stander to play for Munster and change, and if it works out, and I don't think initially they're saying I'm going there for 3 years.
Is there not a quiet word from somebody saying, "Hey, listen, come in, and if everything goes according to plan"?
Oh yeah, sure. That's part. The agent will be told that, and look, if you, there is a bigger picture, and you'd be naive to think that there's not. And you target certain positions over the years, and I think the RFU have done that very astutely. It's a long debate, and I respect the people's opinions on it, whether they think it's right or think it's wrong. But I think the Declan Rice one it's a career move, and it's not. He's 20 years of age. He's a kid. He's still very young. It's his advisors and the people around him have kind of brought, like as I said, if you belt out the national anthem, I just don't know how you can change and sing another national anthem. This has to happen. There has to be a cut-off point. I think at 18 or 19. If you get involved with a senior team, how you can play a senior friendly for one country and then go, well, by the way, I'm not going to play for him. There needs to be some change in that rule there that it cuts out this stuff in the future. But he's a loss to Ireland. But I think it's a complete career move.
Ronan O'Gara, I put you on the spot here. Do you have anything to offer on the Declan Rice saga, or will we move on?
Move on, lads.
The nation is told.
No, I haven't followed it, but I obviously saw what Kevin Kilbane and a few of the boys were saying, and it's you kind of need to know what you represent and what your values are. But as Quinny said, he's 20 years of age, so quite difficult, and you're highly influenced at that age.
We've put Christchurch up as your caption there, but Auckland, I'm assuming, is it?
Yeah, the Crown Plaza in Auckland, very glamorous, isn't it?
It looks a bit bog standard. Have you any photos written behind you, Rog, there to kind of brighten up the picture a bit?
No, it's a life in the hotel room now tonight. So here tonight, tomorrow night, and back down Sunday. So only dying to chat to you. I can keep you going for the morning now, lads, if you want.
Good, we need you. We've had like 15 guests already pull out, so stay with us. It's obviously Super Rugby starting this weekend for people I'm sure they're aware, and you're starting against the Blues tomorrow.
Started, yeah.
I was looking at your record at Eden Park. Mixed enough? Yeah, it's your record personally.
When I used to play for Ireland.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, obviously I never beat them, so that would mean I'd have a poor record there, Adrian. You know.
Well, you had. I mean, I know you're having a dig at me, and that's fair enough. I'm okay with that.
You
actually have one win at Eden Park.
With who? The Lions.
No. Was that
big? I won.
Oh yeah, no, it was. Yeah, it was, wasn't it? Was it the Australia game?
I tell you, he had a great.
The Australia game?
He had a very enjoyable time in 2002 there when I came on the field on the 58th minute in the second test against the All Blacks, and he just came off the field and got replaced for David Humphreys and had a big grumpy head in him as he usually had, but I went on the field and I landed back in the same seat 60 seconds later with him, and Jesus, it cheered you up no end, didn't it? It just made your whole night. You totally forgot about being withdrawn from the match yourself, and you thought this was the best entertainment ever. I was back in the bench with you. That was a good night for you, wasn't it?
Oh, sometimes you have to laugh, don't you?
Well, that was it, yeah. I couldn't laugh at the time.
2011 against Australia, Raj.
Yeah, I know. No, it's a great surface. It's a great stadium, actually. So it's Super Rugby started tonight. Highlanders down to 14 men. I don't know. Did you see the red card?
No.
Very another highly debatable decision, but obviously trying to make the game safe. You should have a look and see what you think. But red card and Highlanders down to 14, and they turned the game around and they beat the Chiefs in Hamilton. So one game on, and there's an Aussie game now on at the minute. So the Rebels are playing the Brumbies. So it's full on now. Yeah. Super Rugby.
What's your week been like? You were obviously here last weekend, and then you're in transit, I presume, for most of the majority of it over there. What does your week involve? You've obviously been spoken about by some significant names in the game over the last number of years about your quality as a coach and what you're bringing to it. So tell us what that is.
What my week was, or what my brief involves? Sorry.
What your week was. So what's the...
Oh, my week was. So yeah, I left Virgin Media on Sunday night, and I flew at 8 o'clock after the France-England game. I got to Christchurch at 1:45, got home at 2:15, shower, got up to the club for 3 o'clock. Tuesday afternoon is kind of individual development opportunity for the boys in the club, so people kind of look at, they have a 3-hour period where they have an opportunity to progress an interest outside the game. So some people would do, a course with police officers. Some people would do maybe financial management exams. Other people might see sports psychologists. So it's very varied, very individualised. That's what they do Tuesday afternoon. Wednesday it's kind of an individual skills day. So the hookers would throw, the nines would do a bit of passing and box kicks. Whoever wants to kick, there's an optional kicking session. I joined in on that, and I was rusty. Very disappointed with my kick quality Wednesday afternoon, and then Thursday is full on. It's a big day. It's in our time, when Quinny and myself stayed, the Tuesday was probably the big session, but Thursday is the big kind of, so in the morning is clarity and kind of walk clarity, and then Thursday afternoon is full on.
And are you working on game plan, Ronan, sorry to cut across you, are you working on game plan then over the course of that, or how does your brief this week fit in then to the sort of overall scheme of things for the game plan for tomorrow?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so basically I would be just getting running lines or thoughts or positional shape on first phase attack. So every time we have a line out or a scrum, what are we hoping to achieve and why are we hoping to do it, and what does that look like for the backs? I wouldn't be in control of the forwards running lines. I'd be in control of everything about the backs basically.
So where does that intersect between whatever the work the forwards coach is doing to get clean ball off a line out, for example, use that?
For example, we would kind of start with units. So units clarity would be the forwards doing their stuff, the backs doing their detail, and then when we come together as a team, the attack coach would kind of take what we did in backs units and forwards units and put that together.
Right. And I presume you were, because I know you mentioned last week about when you were in with the lads, you were talking about the quality of that Blues team. They've not had the easiest of, a few years really. You'll take some heart, I'm sure, from the fact that Sonny Bill is on the bench, but a few decent players in that back line.
Yeah, there is. You expect that, I think once you kind of get involved in coaching, I think you obviously do a fair bit of analysis of the opposition, but you'd be surprised the amount of I suppose time involved with your own team. That's what concerns me basically, because 17 backs, only 10 of them get to tag out, so you have the kind of management of the 7 out of the group, and then the 10 that are going to represent the group at the weekend. So much focus is getting ourselves right. I find I put a lot of my, time and effort into that, because it's something you can measure and something you can control.
Ronan, I know you've only been back down there for a couple of days, but what's your sense of what the New Zealand rugby fraternity think of the Six Nations? Do they watch it a lot? Have they been looking closely at Ireland and England's performances?
Yeah, they did. I think they were just... it's 30 degrees in New Zealand at the minute, so no one, I suppose, understands it, especially because all of the teams I played, and when we went down there, it was always really cold and horrible conditions. So I suppose they just kind of are fascinated with I think in the Ireland-England game they saw the players up close and they was breathing fog coming out of their mouths, so it was like, was it that cold? And I said, yeah, it was that cold, but they were impressed by England. I think a lot of people were just comments in terms of England were good, England were good is what they were saying. And when
yes, line breaking up there small, but we'll try and re-establish that and get back to Ron there in a couple of minutes. Like an interesting brief obviously he has in trying to stitch all that stuff together, where it's interesting to hear that you'll be inherently aware of it, but from the layman's point of view, when you're looking at rugby and you're seeing all these moves stitched together, it just seems like such a normal thing. And actually that breakdown of you do the line out, I'll do the attack move that works off that, like there's a highly technical...
Yeah, and you're trying to gel all that stuff together and there's player input and from that, but that's probably the key. Get the week right. It's all about planning and being prepared as best you can, and that everyone knows their role.
Yeah, and ideally get off to a winning start, Ronan, tomorrow. I assume objective A for yourself and the coaching team.
Yeah, I suppose there's a great. Actually, result hasn't even been talked about. It's been very performance driven, and I know that's cliched, but there's a big thing here about just getting better or get beaten. It's a great phrase, so you either get better or get beaten. So we have to get better in every area, because when you're the champions, teams come after you that little bit harder, and one game can make their season, so we're aware of that. But I think it's, this would be hopefully, if you were to do something spectacular this season and win it 3 times in a row, it's a little bit different to kind of back up. So last year was a bit of a pressure season. So this year there is pressure, but that's not the right mindset to go into this campaign. But I think there's a really sense of expressing ourselves and a sense of enjoying it, enjoying each other's company and enjoying the journey, and that's what makes sport, I think, very special.
Rog, give us a sense of the competitiveness and the bite between the teams in New Zealand. Is it similar to the provincial rugby here? You know, Munster-Leinster play, it's a massive game. Leon McDonald, former Crusaders, coaching the Blues. All these guys, a lot of these guys know each other very well. Is there a bite, and is there the same kind of rivalry in these provincial matches?
I don't think there is. I genuinely don't. I think because
are they all high-fiving each other, chatting before the game, go out and play the match, and all chatting nicely after the game? Give us a sense of what it's like.
You know, I think with the system over here, there's a lot of more movement of players because of the kind of a draft system they have, you know. So essentially for Super Rugby, like, there's 15 out halves needed for Super Rugby for the New Zealand teams. So that's a huge number alone of New Zealand players, you know. So like every squad would have to carry 3 10s. So the way it happens with New Zealand Rugby, I suppose, controlling the players and centrally contracting, they move them around the 5 teams a lot more than, you know what I mean. I think in our time there wasn't a possibility of you know what I mean, 3/4 of the group moving between Leinster and Munster or Munster and Leinster, and I think that's a good thing. But
we're seeing it more in Ireland now, aren't we?
You are, but I think with maybe only a certain amount of players too. I don't think you see it with the top players, you know, or the very top players. It just doesn't make sense, you know, because that's a real strength of the Irish system, I find, in that those people playing for their provinces are from there and they've grown up there, and if you have 10 of them on every team, you're going to have a really strong provincial system. So over here, there's obviously more teams, Alan. So players move around, and they kind of there's temporary replacement players, and there's just I don't think that rivalry would be as strong. But something the Crusaders really pride themselves on is that they have a lot of guys who have only played for the Crusaders, and the massive thing over here is trying to get to play 100 tests for the Crusaders, and that's what all the kind of senior players aspire to do.
You said a couple of weeks ago, and I was chatting to you, probably said it publicly as well, that when you go back, you're going to have to try and assess how do you stop Rico Ioane, Man Nanu. We don't. The Sonny Bill Williams is not playing, correct?
He's on the bench.
He's on the bench, but TJ Fayani, is it?
Yeah.
He's another superb, skillful player. So I know Adrian was asking you a minute about the plan and the structure. How do you stop those guys? What do you do? Hold on to the ball, keep it away from him. Ioane's incredible, isn't he?
Yeah, well, that's you with the ball. I think obviously they're going to have ball at certain places, but I think the message that I've been trying to drill into the guys here is that all Super Rugby players, they love time and space, but if you take away their time and space, it becomes quite difficult. So if you do that connected and you get your team connected to do that 50, 60, 70 times in a game, it hopefully makes it a lot more painful for them than it is for us. So Super Rugby's all out attack, as you can see. If you saw the game this morning, it was just so much space. But one of our policies would be to, what every good footballer likes is time on the ball. You got to try and take away the time, Alan, or else you're going to be just receiving offloads and back under your sticks a lot of the night.
Your superstar 10, Richie Moanga, who you're taking all the credit for, he's starting tonight. Are you excited? Well, you said to me many times that you've developed him into the great player he is now. So, and on a serious note, are you excited? What kind of shape is he in?
I actually genuinely think there's so much more to come. Yeah, he's been electric in training this week. His centre of gravity, his acceleration, his capacity to play off the cuff. He's very powerful. You know what I mean? He has that to his game, exactly like how Joey Carberry busts through the two forwards for his score, or setting up the score for Earlsey against Scotland. He does that regularly as well. You know, I think it's really, his capacity to accelerate through contact is fascinating. So it is great because he's got a bite to him. He can give you lip as well. He's a little bit like coaching you, Quinny. So I have my hands full.
I'd say between the two of you, it's not an unfamiliar.
He's a good player,
story.
though, Richie Mo'unga. To be fair, I've watched him, and Roger's been going on about him. He's a super player.
Just, you mentioned Joey Carberry, and you spoke very glowingly about him last weekend, Ronan, and the capacity that he has. And I suppose playing with instinct was the phrase that jumped out at me that you used at that time. And I suppose the question I had was that it strikes me that that's something that can really, and has been really working at Munster under Van Graan. But like that instinct, or playing that instinct, even that move that you spoke about against Scotland, frequently you see a Joe Schmidt player in that instance going to ground and recycling the ball, not taking that risk of almost, you know, potentially getting isolated at some point.
I wouldn't even say it's taking that risk. I just don't know that they have that ability. I think that's what Joey Carberry has. I think he's an incredible rugby player. I've always maintained he has a long way to go in terms of his game management, because he just needs probably to fine-tune his kicking game at the highest level, which will come, you know what I mean? He's 23, I think. So by the time he's 26, hopefully that'll be really, really top-notch. But what I think a lot of people are beginning to realise is this guy, after 50 minutes in any test match, will be on the pitch. I don't know what position he will be, but his capacity, very few players in the world would score a try he scored against Gloucester when he came in for Munster at 15. When you just kind of, when he faded and swerved and took an inside ball and then got back out to score. You know, I think he has an exceptional centre of gravity. He's very exciting. He's strong. He's powerful, and he's brave. And he plays on instinct, which really excites me.
Given the capabilities and the potential that this guy has, is there a case for just getting him in, and even in terms of the range of positions that he can play, is there a case for just getting him in this Irish team, Ronan, or should we just be a little bit more patient and sort of bide our time and, I mean, go all in at 10 essentially?
No, I wouldn't necessarily think he has to be at 10. You know, I think what also is crucial, Adrian, too, is you know what I mean, when are teams tiring, and at what stage will he be, you know what I mean, like there's very little space in a test game for the first 20 minutes, you know what I mean, so there's no point trying to kind of force your hand there, but maybe 7 minutes before the break, or after 62 to 80 minutes in a test game, the defences are small but flagging. And that's when he's exceptional, if he's fresh. But if he's already done an hour and you're looking for him to break the line, it becomes a lot more difficult. So there's a skill in introducing him. There's a skill in knowing when and where to use him, I would think.
Yeah, like what, just as you're talking, I wonder what shape that takes in whether it's a year's time or 2 years' time or 3 years' time when he is the starting 10. Yeah, well, like... he's obviously taken his chance big time in Munster. I think he's been consistently good this season, and in the Scottish game he had you know what I mean, the intercept is great because it in terms of it can happen to anyone. Obviously if he probably had the chance back, he probably wouldn't have had that shot selection in terms of a pass, but that happens. But you just you know what I mean, reset and get going again. And then he was brilliant for the rest of the game. So, you know, I think he is an option at 10 for Ireland, most definitely. But, you know what I mean, if Johnny's body's fit and his mind is good and he's feeling good, he'll be the starting number 10. There's no doubt about that. But I think if you were a coach and you have someone like Carberry in your back pocket, you just it's a real weapon in terms of having them there.
Well, that's the thing. Like, one of the big criticisms that was kind of thrown at Ireland after the England game was that there was apparently no plan B from Joe Schmidt. Like, I'd be keen to get your take on how different a team is with Joey Carberry at 10 to a team with Johnny Sexton at 10.
Yeah, very different players at different stages of their careers. Obviously, I think like Johnny's head would work like a computer. He's very processed and very calculated, and I think he has a great capacity to probably play.
Yeah, I think we just lost Ronan there for a little bit.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, you're there. Yeah, you're dropping in and out, and Joe's just going to sort that for you there. So stick with us for a second. Yeah, I don't know. Like I think in every sport, the Declan Rice saga is not unlike it, where we rush to want the Declan Rices or the Joey Carberrys of this world to be the immediate fix, and we want it to happen straight away. We're not, and especially, I mean, I don't think it's an Irish thing, but we're not especially patient. We want an easy fix, a great fix. We want it straight away. In terms of putting him in somewhere on the pitch, bit of patience probably.
You don't have to. I think he's matured really well and said he wants to challenge Johnny Sexton this year. I think he big balls to make the move down to Munster and stuff like that. I think what Roger's saying is having an option of even playing him as a full back, playing him as a 12 or playing Sexton as a 12. He just has that little bit of
Could you put him in at 12 now? I mean, the midfield is a bit uncertain, isn't it, in an Irish context?
Well, you can. It depends. I think there's so many good centres there at the moment. It's probably not something that Joe would look to do. You take away a really physical presence of Aki or Henshaw, who are 12s. But I just think having the ability to have Carberry as he can play full 15. He was brilliant for Leinster last year. So look, he's an incredible talent, and probably that game management is something that it just naturally improves as you play more games.
Yeah, all right. One of the other things I want to get your thoughts on, Ronan, before we let you off. I know it's late, about 20 past 10. I'm thinking your time from the little bit.
Usually from my time.
He's tucked up, is he?
He's lights out at 9:30. Yeah, it was a disaster at night. I'd have to wait till he was into a deep sleep and then try and sneak the TV back.
Would you eat room? Would you?
We would, yeah.
All the time?
No, most of the time with Munster. He roomed with Donica, was it, for Ireland most of the time?
Was it Donica Ronan?
Yes.
Yeah.
So definitely lights out early though, wasn't it for you?
You wouldn't know. You were back in tip.
Oh,
the ultimate insult.
The ultimate. Right. Okay. Room with you for Munster then. You were definitely lights out.
Oh yeah. No, I am. Yeah. I like going to bed early usually, but.
I called into him last week at 9:00 one night into his hotel. He was asleep. He'd arranged to meet me, so that tells you anyway. Right, move on.
What as he'd say himself, what are you like? What do you like the night before a game like that? Is your mind sort of racing about the plays that you've done? Are you trying to tweak it? I remember hearing Eddie O'Sullivan talking before about sort of second guessing himself on the game plan, like right up to the sort of last minute. Are you a person who's settled on your game plan, communicated all that across, and even if I wanted to make tweaks, it's too late? Or are you still sort of trying to second guess yourself even now?
No, I think the massive, I suppose, positive about this experience in New Zealand is the fact that I just feel, I don't know, a lot more confident or mellow or secure and not second guessing or not potentially causing myself that mental stress of playing every play over in your head. I think, you know what I mean? You're not playing, so you just got to make sure that you have your players in the best possible headspace before they take the pitch. You know what I mean? It's not about you feeling good. You have absolutely very little role by the time kickoff comes. So what are you beating yourself up over? You know what I mean? I think that you got to trust your preparation. You got to trust that you've worked hard during the week, and then you got to just find that kind of inner contentment and energy for game day that rubs off in your players.
Would you be stressed as a player? Was that something that you would have done?
Oh yeah, I was way too stressed, much too stressed. Yeah, I didn't enjoy it really. I enjoyed the winning dressing room. I enjoyed the sense of accomplishment, but I never really enjoyed the build up. I found it too overcoming, and I just it's important, I think, that you just draw a line in the sand. And now, you know what I mean, there's a lot of good men that have gone, that have left, that haven't the chance for us to analyse the game inside out and enjoy these special moments. So I'm very different in that regard now. It's not what can go wrong, it's what can go right.
Rod, it's the last question I'll ask you, just about the game. Do you feel an added pressure being the champions? Because I was talking about Dundalk this morning, the SSE Electricity League is back on, they're champions, and we were talking about the intrigue of how do teams cope when they've won something and how do they bounce back and win it again. So for you guys, you're the Super Rugby champions, you're away in the first game. Is there added pressure, and what's that mentality like with Scott Robertson and the team? You don't have all your All Blacks back yet. Do you kind of expect to go and win? This word expectation.
I think last year, as I said, I think when you were trying to back it up and win back-to-back titles, there was probably a bit of pressure, but the mindset is very different here. It's very, I suppose, matter of fact, and just get better. Simple as that. And what does that look like? It looks like kind of every guy nailing their detail and every guy bringing something that the team benefits. So it's always what's best for the team. And you just got to park your ego before you come to the dressing room, and then let rip when you get to the training pitch. We have a lot of fun too, though. There's massive emphasis on fun in the Crusaders. And I think that rubs off. I think people enjoy playing for the guy next to them, and you got to work that too, though.
There's the coach ringing to tell you to get yourself to bed.
Yeah, well, sorry. I think the coach deserves a mention. You know, I haven't come across a coach like Razor. He's very, very different. He's a bit of a mad genius. You know, I think he excels around mindset. Fascinating how he views the game and how he views people's minds and how he can get the best out of them, and his motivation is brilliant.
Ronan, a final question for me then is like the culture change that you've seen, I guess, between rugby in New Zealand and rugby in France, because obviously it's pretty trendy this week to completely bash French rugby culture. They've got it from all angles this week. Have you noticed a big disparity between the quality of the cultures?
Yeah, there would be, and the fact that there's so much player movement in France that it's hard to create that really strong player-driven group. Culture is obviously it's when you have an environment that works when there are no coaches there. That's what culture really is. It's when your coaches aren't there and the players are able to run the session themselves. In France, it's a lot of holding hands and telling, while in New Zealand, it's a lot of, I suppose, stability in the environment and a lot of enjoyment, encouragement, a lot of sharing of ideas between players and coaches. So it's you know what I mean, you're right. It's easy to bash the French, but it was a huge challenge and a huge goal of mine to try and create that. And I think in Racing there was a good culture, but the starting point was so different to where a New Zealand club's culture would be.
Well, we'll put you forward for the French job if Jack Brunel gets the sack after the Six Nations. Rog, we'll put you forward for that one anyway. Isn't that right, Adrian?
It's highly possible.
Be the right man for the job. They've taken no outsiders, but I saw Ian McGeechan did a piece in last week after the game and said they need to get an outside coach in and for a change in France. So you could be the man.
Yeah.
That's
move on.
Yeah, move on. Yeah.
Move on.
That's like I think that's probably a good final point to touch on. But like you just mentioned holding hands there and the hand-holding culture that might exist in French rugby culture. Like it's probably reading way too much into this, but that isn't like part of the fact that, say, people who are playing a little bit out of position, like in that back three for France last week, not being able to figure out a situation like they were presented with against England.
Well, it's just it's too hard, I think, to asking a player to do that. You've you know what I mean, players playing at club level, even if they're going against other international players in the position they play, it's a 50-50 game at best. And probably if you're in the French team and you've drawn of as much direction as you would get from another team, it's probably 40-60 against the French players. Then you're getting guys that have never played or rarely at all played in that position, and you're putting them in to Twickenham and you're saying, okay, well, you haven't had clarity in that position. You haven't had the 3 or 4 games to bring you up to speed where you might get a confidence about your positioning. And then you're thrown in at the deep end and you're said, okay, well, defend Owen Farrell's kicking game here. Defend, Johnny May with 30 metres of space either side. It's unrealistic to expect to get results that way, I would find.
Ronan, brilliant. Thanks a million. Best of luck tomorrow.
Cheers, lads. Sorry about the connection. Chat to you soon.
That was perfect. Yeah, good stuff. Thanks a lot. Ronan O'Gara live on the line there from the Crown Plaza Hotel in Auckland.
We've stayed there before.
Yeah? Is that your base? Good spot.
Yeah, it's grand. It's grand.
You're talking about sort of post-playing days, but that glint in your eye.
No, it was a good location. It was right in the centre of the city and close enough to Eden Park as well. So I'm kind of envious. I'd love to be in that position of coaching like him and seeing that culture. And New Zealand rugby is incredible.
Do you ever think about
doing
it? Like you'd probably jump the fence, baby, as our friend would say.
A bit too much, but yeah, I love the idea of doing some sort of coaching, and I do help out some club teams and schools teams and stuff like that. But you've got to really immerse yourself if you're going down a path like that. And it was a natural progression for Rog, to be fair. He was like a coach when you played with him anyway.
Yeah. Was he? Yeah.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. He was very, very intelligent and.
What shape does that take? Like, is that in the weekend that he's into a game, or is
it's just detail and planning and structures around, what way you want to play and the opposition strengths and weaknesses, and it comes really natural to some guys, and not necessarily guys who are internationals. Top class players don't necessarily become top class coaches. Mike Prendergast, who played with Munster, he's done a brilliant job in France. He's with Stade now with Paul O'Connell, and. Prendy is one of the most intelligent, kind of astute rugby brains that you could ever meet. Right. Brilliant vision for space and a fantastic attacking coach. So, Prendy didn't play for Ireland, but there's a lot of guys out there so it's unfair to kind of say, well, you have to play for your national team or excel at the top level. There's some brilliant coaches out there who haven't done that, but I just think you see some guys then that you play with that you go, well, they're practically coaching anyway. It's down to their temperament then, if they want it or not, if they want to continue that, because it's pretty pressurised. His week, as he said there, is completely jam-packed with planning, structure. He's trying to balance that with your personal life and family life as well. So you hear all coaches saying they're in at 6 o'clock in the morning, and they're, before any players or anything arrive, they're trying to structure the day and what's going on, and they're probably having coaches' meetings, and it's relentless when you're a coach.
And would your temperament be more kind of cold, calculated, analytical, or more hairdryer treatment?
You're a hairdryer man, Quinny.
Smashing the hairdryer. No, I'd be much calmer as a coach, I think, than I was probably as a player. I think I'm not sure if I could cope with the head coach role, where you've got the whole process to manage and travel and letting players go. And I think the idea of going out onto a field and having a group of forwards and coaching the line out or scrum and stuff like that, and obviously there's a fair bit goes with that as well, but being the head coach can drive fellas bonkers as well, It's a lot of pressure with it. You win, it's great. You start losing and
he comes on and it's going to be a fleeting
so it's dealing
thing.
With that and
you're not making the sort of money like that you're making if you're a Premier League manager. You just need a gig for a year and then you're set up for life. I think he talks about Scott Robertson there having the right temperament and mindset and stuff like that. He's if you met him, you would go, he's not your kind of, he's funny, he's great crack, he's really outgoing, he's kind of not your robotic type coach sometimes, so he's, but it's a tough gig. Not a bad team to coach, the Crusaders, to be fair. The quality of Pro 14, and I'm an advocate, not amazing this weekend. Not a huge amount of games necessarily to get stuck into. Owen's going to go to his first League of Ireland match. Quinny is one of the big storylines on the Today Show tonight. Have you ever been to a League of Ireland game?
You're going to go to Daily Mount?
I was in Tala about 2 or 3 years ago. I went to a game.
Yeah. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I think you see some great games in it. Some drab ones at times, but I enjoyed watching it, and I watch it on TV if I'm at home.
Somebody points out that somebody on YouTube, Peter M, Owen's local club is Cork City. He's from Kerry, and Cork City. He would hate that though because of the anti-Cork slurs that come out of his mouth.
Yeah, I just can't help myself a few anti-Cork slurs. I suppose Quinny, you're the same as well.
No, I love it. But back in the day when I started, once I played with Munster, then we all became one, you know.
Did you really, though?
The GAA was some rivalry, Cork and Tip in Thurles now in a Munster final. Jesus, that was spiky.
We'll have a lot to get stuck. Are you back in on Monday?
Yeah.
We'll have to get stuck into Six Nation boys then. Thanks a million for the minute. Alan Quinlan, as always, on a Friday, and Ronan O'Gara live on the line there from Auckland as well. Next up, we're going to be talking to the sports writer and activist Joanne O'Riordan about a piece she's written on the 20x20 movement this week, so we'll get her thoughts on all of that. But before that, we have a little clip of some of the show from during the week.
You got to keep taking your chances, but when you get your chance, you got to take it, Nathan. We had a chance with Rice. We had a chance to qualify him. And we didn't do it.
So 18 months ago, we should have...
case altogether. But you can't stop looking for the outstanding players that qualify for us because these two incidents have happened. You've got to keep at it. You've got to keep going for the best. And hopefully that'll turn out in your favour. You can't force it. You can't make them do it. But if it's there for the taking, then you've got to take it as quickly as you possibly can.
And if that means putting them on for a minute at the end of a competitive international,
yes,
so be it.
Yes. And he's qualified for it. And then there wouldn't have been any fuss. If he had qualified at that time for us, Rice, and he really enjoyed it, he enjoyed the 3 matches playing for us, that was the end of the story. The only thing that happened after that is we didn't qualify him, so Southgate came into the picture, and other influences came into the picture. But if it happened at the time and Rice had qualified for us, he was as happy as Larry, that would have been it.
Yeah, John Giles' thoughts on the Declan Rice saga on the show last night. You can check out that full piece up on our YouTube channel or on the website as well, offtheball.com. Right, we spoke to, if you're watching last week, Anna Kessel, the Guardian journalist, about the new 20x20 journalism award scheme that's been launched. And on that basis, an interesting article in the Irish Times this week by Joanne O'Riordan. Women's sport needs cash more than the journalists covering it. Good morning to Joanne. You're not having it.
I promise I'm not as loosey as I come across in that article.
Give us for people who haven't read it, give us the nub of the issue with the award scheme.
I suppose really when the award scheme came out, I was actually as excited as well, and I thought, geez, what an interesting way to get women in sport kind of on the front pages, things like that. And they had the figures, I suppose, back it up that 3% of print coverage and I think 2% of kind of broadcast coverage was dedicated to women in sports. And then I suppose I was kind of looking a little bit further into it, and I was like, geez, I wouldn't feel too bad taking home €1,000 on a monthly prize, to be honest, if I wrote a good feature. But at
Joanne,
the same time,
you know what? The line isn't amazing, and we want to be able to sort of have the conversation where we can fully hear what it is that you're saying. And the line is not amazing, and I'm sure the people sort of struggling to probably fully hear the argument. We're better off sort of trying to establish that line properly, and then we'll try and get you back up on the line as well. So just bear with us for a minute while we get all of that, get that sorted. So we'll come back to that in just a few minutes' time. Plenty of people have been in touch with us about our conversations this morning. Obviously, people suggesting that Eoin gets the finger out and immerses himself in Cork city culture. That would be a bit slightly controversial.
I live in
more
Dublin.
Than controversial.
I live in Dublin.
I know, but you don't, from a GAA point of view, just because you live in Dublin doesn't mean you support Dublin GAA, clearly.
But Kerry literally have a GAA team. Kerry don't have a League of Ireland team.
What's the... All right. Yeah, I mean,
I
do see some.
That's my point here. I've never actually. I didn't grow up in a culture where League of Ireland was part of my sporting landscape. It just wasn't the case. That's why I've been on the outside looking in. At least with rugby, Munster was always a fairly big thing. At least certainly coming from the age that I am.
And also there's obviously litany of Kerry players who have and play for Munster.
There's that for sure, and also Munster got very, very successful when I started to have a good awareness of what sport actually means.
I'm throwing this out there now on the basis that I have no answer to, but I'm sure there's Kerry players who play for Cork City as well.
I'm sure, yes there is. There
and 100% for your club, Bohemians too.
There 100% is, and I know that, and that's a good point. But ultimately that's the reason behind it. To be honest with you, I haven't put a whole lot of rationale into it.
No, you haven't, it's fair.
Maybe Cork City will become the team I support. Logistically, it just doesn't make as much sense as going down 15 minutes on the road, 10 minutes on the road. to see whoever it may be.
The easy option on is what you're saying.
And that's the point. That's why I'm doing this, is because it's on our doorstep.
It's easy.
And you never know what you're going to see.
Fair enough.
Never not watch football matches, Declan Lynch says.
That's a good point. Joanne's back in the line. I think we've established a bit of a better line. Joanne, will we take from the top there again, just so, because the line was dipping out again, in and out again. For people who haven't read the piece, what's the essence of your point?
So I suppose when I wrote the piece, last week I think when the awards were out, I was as excited as well, to I suppose improve the women in sport kind of coverage, and they had the statistics I suppose behind it that 3% of print coverage is dedicated to women in sport, and something like 2% is dedicated on broadcasting coverage. So they had the stats and figures and everything behind it, and then I suppose I was reading a little bit more into it, and I was like, as much as I'd love to kind of take home, the €1,000 cash prize and a monthly award that would look kind of nice on my mantelpiece. I felt a little bit bad. I suppose I'm kind of going around to different clubs and they're crying out, for different facilities, basic stuff that a men's club would take for granted, like, cones, for their drills, bibs, extra footballs, different things like that. And I suppose really, my point was just, the cash prize, I suppose it would be good to kind of put it towards maybe the club or the actual feature maybe that you've written it on instead.
Yeah, and I mean the only thing that struck me from it was that it's possible that, and indeed I actually think it's a solid idea, but that the two of them could coexist, because I can see a world where people are incentivised to, and I know from reading your piece it wasn't necessarily the thing that worked for you, but I could definitely see that people would be incentivised by the idea that actually if I engage with this sport, because I suppose the coverage of women's sport is not where it needs to be, and that's the essence obviously of the entire movement, and acknowledging that and saying actually if some people are incentivised by having the award on the mantelpiece or having the €1,000 as is the case in this particular award scheme, some people are incentivised by that, and actually maybe sort of that these things can actually coexist.
Yeah, no, definitely. I suppose I wasn't actually dissing it kind of in that kind of whole grand scheme of things. I suppose I'm living, breathing proof that how one media story can take off, and how you could become the face of something. I mean, in my kind of activism career, I've kind of had a good relationship with the media, and if it wasn't for them, I suppose portraying my story and portraying I suppose my thoughts, my feelings, and everything else, I suppose I wouldn't be the person that I am here today. But at the same time, I suppose. At the end of the day, we're living in a world where I suppose kind of money kind of does in a way make the world go around. And I suppose, I was kind of looking at, the medals that had been won, last year, and, 44 had been won by female athletes, and, I think 7 more were won by mixed team athletes. And that doesn't, in my opinion, that doesn't really come, from one little kind of front page snippet or one little bit, on page, 5 of the Irish Times or whatever. That comes, from hard work and dedication. And I suppose the facilities then, they need the money, to kind of keep going. You see kind of, running clubs being shut down, because people aren't using them, and, gyms, not being used, and they're not raising enough cash, cash flow and different things like that. So that's kind of, I suppose, where I was coming from. And, at the same time, it's kind of funny because, I was at an event maybe a few months ago with the Irish Times for their Women in Sport Awards, and I was talking to Kelly Harrington afterwards, and we were kind of laughing, saying, she doesn't obviously do what she does, for the awards or for the Irish Times to acknowledge her existence. She kind of does it because she loves it, but at the same time, she kind of needs to make a living as well out of it, and I suppose that's my angle really where I was coming from. I think the 20 by 20 is a fantastic initiative, and I think they are doing great things, and they are raising the awareness for the women, in sport game. I suppose, for the first time, my dad is talking to me actively about Cork ladies football, or Cork camogie and different things, and I suppose, we're kind of hoping then that the word of mouth kind of spreading it and, can translate, I suppose, to going to games and therefore buying tickets and then, paying money, and that money then going back into younger clubs, because I suppose the future really, I suppose, is on those younger clubs. The standard of the competition will be raised if the younger clubs have kind of everything that they need in order to progress, throughout their sport.
Yeah. Look, it's fair enough, and it's a point well made about the success as well, and the sort of medal haul. If that's how we measure success, is obviously heavily weighted on the female side. Listen, thanks a million for taking the call this morning, Joanne. We'll speak to you again down the track.
Cheers, no hassle. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Joanne O'Riordan on the line there to discuss her piece in the Irish Times. You can check it out. It was up there during the week. Women's sport needs cash more than the journalists covering it. And that's Joanne's thoughts on that. That is, I think, pretty much it from us for this morning. Just 9:40.
Yeah, we can go for the full 2 hours if you want.
You're off to get yourself set for your big debut tonight?
Not really, to be honest with you. I was born ready for a moment like this.
Will you go with a bunch of mates, or will you sort of head down your own, or what's the plan?
I don't know. It's we'll see how that floats. Potentially. We'll see if they're interested.
You haven't really organised anything. The tickets
no, I haven't.
Still available?
Presume so. That's a bad assumption on my part.
You just do what you always do and just get press pass.
I want, as I say, I'm here to support the team. Like if you're going to press pass, you're not going to, or in the press box. I don't know. Like you're not really going to get the full immersive experience. I dare say. You'll probably ask me to work anyway as well if I get a press pass.
I mean, look, I wouldn't. If you're there, I mean, what I'd say to you is, look, if you're just going to the game and you're using your season ticket to go in, then just do that. Like, but I mean, if you wanted to go, obviously, and work. Happy days, you know.
Happy days is right.
Different thing, though.
Completely different thing.
Yeah. Final reminder to get your tickets for next Wednesday's A Night for Amanda. It's at the Royal Marine Hotel in Dunleary. Owen's going to be there. So why wouldn't you want to be there? Is the short story. What are you doing?
I don't like your tone there.
No, that's I'm endorsing you.
That is
I endorse this person or product.
A few of us doing a few panels with actual GAA talent as well. So it should be a great all night.
Going to be joined forces with Coola GAA to raise money for the Amanda Stapleton Fund. We're going to be joined on the night by GAA royalty in the shape, as Owen says, of Kieran Donaghy's going to be there, Sean Boylan's going to be there, Tommy Walsh, Dahi Regan, Derek McGrath as well, going to be among us, joining us on the night for this off-air event, so you won't hear it on air, I don't think. Tickets are just €20, so get yourself along there, and you can email adulthurlingcoola, CUALA @gmail.com for tickets for that event, and they are going to be worthwhile. We're going to be back on your radio tonight from 7 o'clock, and obviously all across the weekend as well with all the live sport. But for myself and Owen for this morning, good morning.